It's astonishing how many people find themselves lost in the desert. Even more astonishing is how often they stumble into my gas station at 2 a.m., unaware they've been dead for weeks. My name is Jess Malone, and I handle the night shift at Dead River Gas, a rundown station at a crossroads that doesn't appear on any modern map. We're roughly 110 miles outside of El Paso, Texas, where the desert stretches infinitely in every direction and the stars seem close enough to touch. I never intended to work here. Nobody does. But when you're running from the voices of deceased loved ones that refuse to be silent, you end up in unexpected places. After my brother passed away in Iraq, I started hearing him everywhere, in crowds, over the phone, through my bedroom wall late at night. The doctors called it complicated grief and gave me pills. They didn't work. Then I found the job listing, night attendant needed. Must be comfortable with unusual customers. Experience with loss preferred. The pay was exceptional, and something about the phrase, experience with loss, spoke to me. During my interview, the owner, an elderly woman named Margaret Maggie Boone, asked me just one question: why can you hear them? When I told her about my brother, she nodded as if that explained everything and handed me an old leather notebook. These are the rules, she said. Not suggestions, not guidelines, rules. They might seem odd, but they keep everyone safe, the living and the dead. She hesitated. Especially those who don't realize they're gone yet. I thought she was out of her mind. Now I understand she was just being truthful. Rule number 1, always check their reflections before accepting payment. I learned this lesson the hard way my first week. A hiker walked in around midnight, coated in dust and looking parched but otherwise fine. He grabbed water and trail mix, then approached the counter. Something about him felt off, but I couldn't pinpoint it until I glanced at the security mirror. He had no reflection. "That'll be $77.50, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He placed a handful of coins on the counter, crusted in red desert dust. As I examined them, I realized they were ancient, some dating back to the 1800s. "Is there a problem?" he asked, and I noticed for the first time that his voice lacked an echo, as if it came from somewhere distant. Maggie appeared from the back room, she does that often, and smoothly took over. "Sir, I believe you're a little turned around. The crossing is just past the old water tower off Route 285. The hiker's expression shifted, not physically, but something in his eyes changed. "I'm not. I was just hiking. Just lost my way." "You've been lost for quite some time," Maggie said softly. 3 weeks, to be exact. "They found your body yesterday near Black Hollow Ridge." He looked at her, then at his hands, which were beginning to appear translucent. "But I was just. It happens to everyone eventually," Maggie reassured him. "The crossing will take you where you need to go. Your family's been waiting." Slowly, the hiker nodded, the confusion leaving his face. He turned and walked out. Through the window, I watched him head east, his figure fading more with each step until he disappeared into the desert night. The coins remained on the counter. Maggie swept them into a jar filled with similar pieces of old currency. "First rule," she reminded me. "Always check their reflection. The living cast shadows in mirrors, the dead cast memories." Later that night, Maggie showed me the jar, brimming with coins from different eras: Roman denarii, Spanish doubloons, Gold Rush era dollars. "Each coin is a story," she said. "Each story belongs to someone who needed guidance." I picked up an Indian head penny from 1925 and felt a sudden flash of memory, a young man lost in a dust storm during the Great Depression, struggling to make it home one final time. "They leave these behind," Maggie explained. "Money holds no value where they're going. But the memories attached? Those are priceless. That's how we learn their stories and help the next ones find their way." Rule number 2, never let them see today's newspaper. Time works differently for the dead. Some have been wandering for decades, believing only minutes have passed. This rule exists because realizing how long they've been gone can break something within them, something irreparable. I broke this rule only once, about a month into my job. A woman entered wearing a powder blue waitress uniform, her name tag reading Betty Lou Carter. She looked like she'd stepped right out of a 1950s roadside diner. "Sweetheart, could I get today's paper?" she asked, fishing in her coin purse. "My boy's coming home from Vietnam today. I need to be ready." My heart sank. I knew better, but her hopeful expression made me hesitate. Maggie was in the back, she couldn't stop me. Betty took the newspaper with a smile that quickly vanished as soon as she saw the date. Her hands trembled. This can't be right. Yesterday was 1968. It was. Her voice cracked. My boy. Tommy, he was coming home. The lights flickered. The air grew so cold I could see my breath. "I waited," she whispered. "I waited every day. Baked his favorite apple pie. Kept his room ready. But he never." The newspaper ignited in her hands, but she didn't seem to notice. "They said he was missing in action. Said they'd keep looking. I waited. I'm still waiting." The windows frosted over. Items flew off the shelves, candy bars, cigarettes, magazines, swirling chaotically. Betty's form flickered like a glitching TV, shifting between the young waitress and something older, worn, and desolate. Maggie rushed in holding a small, aged envelope. "Betty Lou Carter," she called. "I have something for you. From Tommy." Everything froze, the flying objects, the frost, the flickering lights. Betty turned to Maggie, hope and fear battling in her eyes. "This was among his belongings," Maggie murmured, extending the envelope. "He penned it the day before he disappeared. It was meant to reach you, but..." Betty accepted the letter with trembling hands. As she read, tears slid down her cheeks, glistening like liquid silver beneath the harsh fluorescent glow. "He adored you, Betty," Maggie said. "He's been waiting too, at the crossing, wondering when his mother would finally come home." Betty lifted her gaze from the letter, and for the first time, I noticed serenity in her eyes. "The crossing is east of here, just beyond the old water tower. You won't miss it." After Betty departed, still clutching the letter, I helped Maggie tidy up the clutter. "Was that truly from her son?" I asked. Maggie shook her head. "Tommy Sullivan's remains were never recovered, but sometimes a soothing falsehood is kinder than a lingering uncertainty. She needed closure to move forward. Now she'll have it. Rule number 3, if they inquire about others who've come through, speak only of the crossing. This rule exists because some of them are hunters. They wear familiar faces, speak in familiar tones, but they're seeking souls that haven't found peace. The longer a soul wanders, the more susceptible it becomes to these creatures. Just last week, a man in a police uniform entered. Everything about him appeared legitimate, the badge, the utility belt, the measured way he carried himself, but his eyes were off. Too dark. Too hungry. "Evening," he said, leaning on the counter. "I'm searching for someone. A young woman, possibly came through here recently. Victim of a car crash. Name's Lisa Harrington." I knew exactly who he meant. Lisa had been here 2 nights ago, disoriented and scared, still clad in her torn homecoming dress. Maggie had guided her east, toward the crossing. "Haven't seen anyone matching that description," I replied, recalling the rule. His smile didn't touch his eyes. "You sure? It's crucial I find her. She's lost, needs help getting where she belongs." "If she was lost, she would have been sent to the crossing," I said carefully. "That's about a mile east." His smile faded. The air thickened, like breathing through fog. "The crossing isn't for everyone," he said, his voice subtly warping. "Some souls require different destinations." Maggie appeared beside me, clutching an old compass. The needle spun wildly before fixing east. "There's only one place that matters," she said firmly, "and you don't belong there." The man's expression twisted. For an instant, something ancient and ravenous peered through those eyes. Then he straightened, adjusted his badge, and strode out without another word. "What was that?" I asked Maggie. "A collector," she said grimly. "They track wandering souls, offering false solace, false endings. But what they truly offer is eternal suffering." She tucked the compass into a drawer I'd never noticed before. "That's why we never reveal more than the crossing." "And what exactly is the crossing?" I finally asked, a question I'd been holding back since I started. Maggie paused for a long moment. "It's hope," she said at last. "It's peace. It's whatever they need to finally let go." She looked at me. "That's all you need to know for now. There are more rules to learn first." She was right. There were more rules. Many more. Like what to do when they try to use the phone, why cigarettes are off limits, or what happens if they linger until sunrise. But those are stories for another day. The sun is rising, and I need to prepare. Maggie says there's a bus crash on the highway tonight. We'll have a lot of confused visitors who'll need guidance east to the crossing, to whatever lies beyond. The bus crash unfolded just as Maggie predicted. 6 lost souls wandered into the store that night, each bewildered, each needing direction. By sunrise, I was drained but satisfied. We'd helped them all find their way east. That's when Maggie decided I was ready to learn the harder rules. "You've mastered the basics well," she said, producing a worn leather notebook. "But now it's time for the difficult ones. These rules aren't just about aiding the lost anymore." I thought about the collector in the police uniform, the darkness I'd glimpsed behind his eyes. "Difficult how?" Maggie's expression darkened. "Not everything that comes here seeks peace. Some are hunting. Rule number 4, if they arrive in groups of 3, don't let them separate." At first, I didn't grasp why this mattered. What difference did it make if visitors, or whatever they were, split up in the store? Maggie explained using the old coins we had collected. 3 is a potent number, she said, positioning 3 identical pennies from 1922 in a triangle. But only when intact. When she moved 1 penny away, all 3 coins began to smolder. A week after learning this rule, I saw it in practice. They arrived just before midnight. 3 teenagers in Letterman jackets, straight out of a 1950s yearbook. Everything about them seemed ordinary at first, except they moved in eerie synchronization, their steps perfectly aligned. "Evening," they said in unison, their voices overlapping in a way that made my teeth ache. "Just need some smokes." I checked the security mirror. No reflections. Dead, then. But something about these ones felt off. They drifted through the aisles together, still in that unsettling sync. I kept a close watch, remembering rule number 4. "I'll check the back," one said. "I'll try the counter," said another. "I'll look near the door," said the third. They began to split. The fluorescent lights flickered. The air turned frigid, frosting the windows. In the security mirror, I glimpsed their true forms, 3 gaunt, skeletal figures draped in human skin like ill-fitting suits. "We don't sell cigarettes after midnight," I said quickly, recalling Maggie's teachings. "Store policy." They turned back to me, moving in unison. Their grins stretched unnaturally wide, revealing too many teeth. "That's not very helpful," they said together. "We could make it worth your while." They produced handfuls of those ancient coins we collected. "The crossing is east of here," I said firmly. "Just past the old water tower. That's where you need to be." Their smiles faltered. The air filled with the stench of decay and grave earth. "We're not interested in the crossing," they said, their voices distorting. "We're interested in you." Maggie materialized beside me, holding an old yearbook. She opened it to a marked page, revealing their photographs in original form. Beneath each was the same date of death, June 15, 1957. "You've been trying the same trick for 66 years, Maggie said calmly. It didn't work then, and it won't work now. The crossing is east. Choose to go there, or choose to leave. Those are your only options. Their faces flickered between teenage facades and something much worse. Then, moving as one, they turned and walked out. But they didn't go east. After they left, Maggie revealed the rest of that yearbook page. The three had perished in a car accident following their graduation, but they hadn't died alone. They had taken 4 other students with them, students who trusted them, followed them, and allowed them to break away from the group. They hunt in 3s, Maggie explained. 1 to trap, 1 to turn, 1 to take. But only if they can split apart. Together, they're bound by rules, our rules. Apart. She shut the yearbook. Apart, there's something else entirely. What happens to the souls they capture? I asked. Maggie simply shook her head. Let's hope you never have to find out. Rule number 5. When the register displays impossibly old dates, shut it immediately. Our register is ancient, one of those mechanical types with physical buttons and a heavy cash drawer. Most of the time, it functions normally, printing standard receipts with current dates. But occasionally, late at night, it starts displaying much older dates. My first encounter with rule number 5 happened about 2 months into my job. A woman approached the counter wearing clothes that seemed to shift between styles and eras as she moved. She placed a single item down, a newspaper, but not one of ours. This one was yellowed, with a date at the top reading March 15, 1888. Just this, she said. Her voice echoed strangely, like it was coming from the depths of a well. I rang it up without thinking. The register emitted an unusual sound, like grinding gears against sand. The digital display flickered, then showed March 15, 1888. 1 cent. Maggie's warning rang in my mind. I reached to close the register, but the woman's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Her skin was ice cold. Finish the sale, she whispered. Her eyes had turned completely black. I need my receipt, need to prove where I was, need to prove I didn't do it. The register's display continued cycling through years, 1888, 1889, 1890. With each year, the woman's appearance altered. Her clothing decayed, her skin grayed, her eyes sank deeper into their sockets. Let go, I said firmly. The crossing is east of here. That's where you'll find your proof. No, she shrieked, her fingers digging into my wrist like claws. I have to prove I didn't kill them. The newspaper will show I was here. Just print the receipt. Maggie appeared, holding something that resembled an old court document. Mary Wilkins, she read. Acquitted of all charges. March 16, 1888. Found innocent of the murders. The woman, Mary, froze. Her grip weakened. But, they all thought you were innocent, Maggie said gently. The real killer confessed the day after this paper was printed. Your name was cleared. Mary's form stabilized, reverting to her original appearance, a young woman in a modest 1880s dress. I've been trying to prove it for so long. The proof is waiting at the crossing, Maggie said. Along with everyone who ever doubted you. After Mary left, heading east like so many others, Maggie showed me her wrist, a scar identical to where Mary had gripped mine. The register connects to their time, she explained. If you complete the sale, print a receipt, you create a tether. Sometimes that's what they want, a link to their past, a way to stay here. But staying isn't what they need. Peace is what they need. Rule number 6, if you hear music from the storeroom, don't dance to it. It might sound like the strangest rule yet, but it's also one of the most perilous. Because the music is beautiful. Because it makes you want to dance. And because once you start, you might never stop. I learned why this rule exists during a quiet night shift. I was doing inventory when I heard it, the soft strains of an old blues tune coming from the storeroom. The kind of music that seeps into your bones and makes your feet want to move. A man was dancing in the storeroom. He wore a World War II Army uniform, moving with the effortless grace of someone who had spent a lot of time in dance halls. He smiled when he saw me. "Care to cut a rug?" he asked, extending his hand. "The ship leaves for the Pacific tomorrow. Might be my last chance to dance." The music swelled, a sweet, melancholic trumpet solo that made my heart ache. My foot tapped involuntarily. "I hear the music at the crossing is better," I managed to say, fighting the urge to take his hand. His smile turned sad. "Been to the crossing. Didn't like what I found there." He kept dancing, his movements becoming smoother, more hypnotic. Better to dance. Always better to dance. Time doesn't touch you when you're dancing. I realized he was right. Time seemed distorted. The song should have ended, but it kept playing, kept drawing me in. My body swayed to the rhythm. Maggie's voice cut through the music like a blade. "Thomas Sullivan, 107th Infantry Division. Last seen dancing at the Grand Mesa Hotel, June 5, 1944. The soldier, Thomas, stumbled mid-step. "Your ship did leave for the Pacific," Maggie continued. "Without you. They found you still dancing 3 days later. Your heart had given out, but your feet kept moving." The music faltered. Thomas looked down at his feet, which were still keeping time to a fading beat. "I only wanted one final dance," he murmured. "The music at the crossing is better," Maggie repeated. "And there's someone there waiting to dance with you, someone who's been waiting since 1944. Thomas lifted his gaze. "Betty? My Betty's there?" Maggie nodded. The music was barely a whisper now. Thomas adjusted his uniform, gave us a sharp salute, and walked eastward. This time, he didn't dance. "The music is a snare," Maggie explained later. "It makes you want to linger, to keep moving to its rhythm. But it's not real music. It's the sound of time slipping away, of life advancing while you're stuck in place." She showed me an old ledger, page after page of names, all annotated with the same note, "Found dancing." "They believe if they keep dancing, time won't catch up to them," she said. "They're not wrong. But that's not living, it's not peace. It's just another kind of death. There are many more rules, of course. Some I'm still grasping, others I hope I never have to apply. But these initial rules taught me the true nature of this job. We're not just a gas station. Not merely a stop along the way. We are the last hope for lost souls to find their way home, to reach the crossing, to finally be at peace." After the dancing soldier departed eastward, Maggie told me I was prepared for the deeper rules, the ones concerning more than just lost souls or hunters, but the very essence of death itself. "You've seen how some souls get trapped here," she said one evening, flipping through her worn leather notebook. "Now you need to understand why. And, more importantly, how to prevent it from happening." Rule number 7, never allow them to look at their own reflection in the bathroom mirror. The bathroom mirror is unlike the security mirrors we use to reveal their true selves. Those reflect what they are. The bathroom mirror shows them what they've become. Late one night, a young woman entered wearing a tattered wedding gown. Dust and grit clung to the once pristine fabric, and her makeup was smeared with what seemed like old tears. "Can I use your restroom?" she asked, her voice ragged as if she'd been screaming. "I need to fix my makeup. I can't be late for my wedding." I was about to refuse, recalling the rule, but she was already making her way toward the restroom. I hurried after her, but the door locked before I could intervene. "Just need a moment," she called out from behind the door. "Thomas is waiting. I can't let him see me like this." The store's fluorescent lights flickered. In the security mirror, I caught a glimpse of her reflection, no longer a bride, but a withered corpse in decayed silk, fingers worn to bone from clawing at shattered car windows. "Lauren Grayson," Maggie's voice echoed. The ceremony was beautiful. "Thomas waited at the altar for 3 hours before they found your car." A scream came from the restroom, not of fear, but of remembered pain. The lights flickered faster. "I just wanted to look perfect for him," Lauren wept through the door. I took a shortcut through the desert. The storm came so fast. He's no longer waiting at the altar, Maggie said softly. He's been waiting at the crossing. For 40 years. The bathroom door rattled in its frame. I can still make it right, Lauren pleaded. Just need to fix my makeup. Just need to see myself. If you look in that mirror, Maggie warned, you'll never leave this bathroom. You'll spend forever trying to fix what's already gone. Is that what Thomas would want? The door went still. He waited 40 years? At the crossing? Not the altar? He's ready whenever you are. The door creaked open. Lauren stepped out, eyes fixed on the ground, carefully avoiding all reflective surfaces. The crossing, she whispered. It's east, about a mile, Maggie and I said in unison. After she left, I helped Maggie clean up the bathroom. The mirror was cracked in a spiderweb pattern, though Lauren had never touched it. The mirror reveals their true state, Maggie explained. Not just their physical end, but every moment of fear, pain, and regret they've endured. Most can't bear it. They get stuck, trying to correct what can't be undone. She ran her fingers over the cracked glass. The fractures mended themselves, but faint scars remained, only visible at certain angles. Each crack is someone who looked, Maggie said softly. Someone who couldn't let go of their former self. Rule number 8, if they ask you to help with unfinished business, don't go with them. This rule is difficult because it preys on our instinct to help. They'll plead, beg for your assistance to complete one last task, to tie up a loose end. But it's never truly about unfinished business. A man entered, dressed in an old mail carrier's uniform, his bag heavy with letters. His clothing was soaked through, despite the fact that it hadn't rained in months. Need some help with my route, he said, water dripping onto the floor. Got caught in a flash flood. But these letters, they have to be delivered. I remembered the rule. The crossing is east of here, I said automatically. He shook his head, droplets flying from his hair. Not yet. People are waiting for their mail. Bills, birthday cards, letters from loved ones. He extended his bag toward me. Just help me finish the route, then I'll go. The water pooling at his feet carried the stench of river mud and decay. In the security mirror, I could see fish gliding through the holes in his uniform. William Reynolds, Maggie said, appearing with an old postal service document. Your body was recovered 2 days after the flood. Every letter was found and delivered. But he clung to his bag. I promised. A mailman always completes his route. And you did, Maggie reassured him. Your replacement ensured every letter reached its destination. Your final route was completed. Then why do I still have all these? He opened his bag, revealing hundreds of letters, all addressed to people long gone. The ink on the envelopes ran like tears, but the dates were unmistakable, all from the day he drowned. Because you can't let go, Maggie said gently. But it's time, William. Your job is done. You can rest now. He gazed at his bag one last time before placing it on the ground. It melted into a pool of clear water that vanished in moments. The crossing, he murmured. East, about a mile. Rule number 9, when they inquire about those who reach the crossing, provide only the necessary details. This rule is the most challenging for me on a personal level because sometimes they ask about my brother. Just last night, a soldier entered, wearing the same desert camouflage my brother had on the last time I saw him. His uniform was coated in dust that resembled the Iraqi desert too much. I'm searching for someone, he said. Daniel Grayson. We served in the same unit. My heart skipped a beat. That was my brother's name. The crossing is east of here, I responded automatically, struggling to keep my voice steady. You're his sister, aren't you? Jessica? The soldier leaned in. He spoke about you often. He has something he needs to tell you. Let me take you to him. For a moment, I wanted to agree. To follow him, to see my brother once more, to hear whatever message he had for me. Maggie's hand clamped down on my shoulder. In the security mirror, I saw the soldier's true form, not a soldier at all, but a collector wearing my brother's memory like a disguise. Daniel Grayson found the crossing months ago, Maggie said firmly. He's at peace, and you're not welcome here. The entity mimicking my brother snarled, its illusion fracturing to reveal the darkness beneath. Then it vanished, leaving behind only the lingering scent of gunpowder and desert sand. Your brother did reach the crossing, Maggie reassured me later. Those who find peace don't return. They have no messages to send, no lingering regrets. Then why do I still hear him sometimes? I asked. Maggie paused for a long while. Because grief echoes, she eventually said. Collectors manipulate those echoes to hunt. But they can't imitate true peace. That's why we only mention the crossing. The real souls make it there. The others, they can't even get close. There are more rules, of course. Guidelines for the phone booth that rings at midnight. Instructions for when the ice machine dispenses memories instead of ice. Procedures for handling the desert when it tries to invade. But those are tales for another time. Dawn is breaking, and with it comes a different crowd, the living, who don't yet need directions to the crossing. Not yet. Eventually, they all end up here. Everyone does. The thing wearing my brother's memory wasn't the last collector we encountered that week. More kept arriving, wearing the faces of the departed like masks. Maggie said it was a sign that something was changing. She was right. Rule number 10, never open the black book in the office. The black book had always been there, resting on Maggie's desk. Its ancient leather cover, yellowed pages, and lack of a title made it mysterious. I'd never seen her touch it until last night. I found her in the office after my run-in with the collector. The book lay open before her, and she appeared older than I'd ever seen. It's time, she said without glancing up. Time for you to learn the last few rules. Maggie, what's going on? Why are so many collectors showing up lately? She shut the book carefully. Because they know I'm leaving. After 60 years, it's my turn to cross over. My chest tightened. No. You can't. Everyone finds their way there eventually, Jessica. Even the keepers. She offered a bittersweet smile. Especially the keepers. Rule number 11, when the crossing calls a keeper, they must go. Maggie showed me her reflection in the security mirror. For the first time, I saw her true self, a young woman in 1960s attire, her faded name tag reading trainee. I died here, she said plainly. Car crash in '63. The keeper before me, old Samuel, helped me understand this place. Guided me to find my purpose. But I didn't cross. Not then. Someone had to stay and help the lost find their way. She opened the black book once more. Every keeper stays until the crossing calls them. Until they discover someone to take their place. She fixed her eyes on me. Me? I whispered. But I'm not. I'm still alive. You are. But you hear them, see them, understand them. Just like I did. She turned a page. That's why your brother's passing brought you here. It wasn't an accident, it was destiny. The wind picked up outside, carrying red desert sand that shimmered like blood under the fluorescent lights. They're coming, Maggie said, rising to her feet. The collectors. They always try to prevent a keeper from reaching the crossing, aiming to break the cycle. Rule number 12, a keeper must always remain at the waypoint. The book belongs to you now, Maggie said, pressing it into my hands. All the rules are in there, along with the reasons behind them. The true meaning of the crossing. Everything you'll need. The wind shrieked through the windows. Outside, I could see them assembling, countless collectors donning the faces of the departed like grotesque festival masks, their real forms writhing beneath the surface. Maggie, I can't do this. You can, she said with certainty. You've been ready since the moment you arrived." She removed her name tag and affixed it to my shirt. As soon as it touched me, the letters morphed from Maggie to Jessica. The door slammed open. The collectors flooded in, a wave of borrowed faces and starving shadows, but they halted at the counter, constrained by rules they couldn't defy. "It's time," Maggie said. She already looked younger, more like the version in her reflection. "Keep them safe, Jessica. Help them find their way. Maggie, don't go." But she kept moving, heading east. The collectors parted before her, powerless to interfere with the keeper answering the crossing's summons. I watched her walk into the distance, her figure becoming more translucent with every step. Just before she vanished entirely, she turned back one final time. In that instant, I saw her true self, not just a reflection, but her very being, a young woman who had dedicated 6 decades of her afterlife to guiding others toward peace. "Thank you," I whispered, unsure if she could hear me. The collectors advanced, their stolen features twisting with frustration and hunger. Yet as they drew closer, I felt something shift within me. The same force that allowed me to hear the dead, that had brought me to this place, finally felt whole. This was why I'd been able to hear my brother's voice, not to haunt me, but to prepare me. I stood tall, feeling the weight of 60 years of rules and duties settle onto my shoulders. "This waypoint is close to you," I declared, my voice carrying the quiet strength I had always heard in Maggie's. "The crossing is east. That's all you need to know." They shrieked in fury, their borrowed facades dissolving to expose the darkness beneath, but they withdrew, dissolving back into the desert night. Rules are rules, even for them. I glanced down at the black book in my grip, then at my reflection in the security mirror. The name tag now read Jessica, but beneath it, I could still faintly see Maggie's name and Samuel's before her, and all the keepers who came before. The register beeped. 3:33 a.m. A car rolled into the lot, an old model, its metal dented on one side. The driver remained in her seatbelt, though her body had been found without it 3 days prior. She appeared bewildered, adrift, and frightened, just as I had been before I found my place here. I adjusted Maggie's worn name tag, took hold of the black book, and stepped toward the door. The lost would keep arriving, seeking guidance, clarity, and peace. They always have. They always will. And now I'm here to help them move on. Not because it's my duty, but because it's my purpose. Because every soul that reaches the crossing is another step toward restoring balance, between existence and departure, between sorrow and serenity. Even the collectors can't change that. At Dead River Gas, we don't just provide directions to the crossing. We offer permission to let go, permission to embrace peace. And in the end, that's what truly matters, leading lost souls home, one by one, until the very stars burn out and the final wandering spirit finds its way east.